Hey everyone, and thank you for joining the final day of the Aegis Virtual Conference. It's unfortunate what's going on in the world today, but hopefully we can spend some time all together and learn about some great companies that Aegis is aware of, and I'm sure some of the investors that we have on both YouTube Live and on the Zoom webinar are also fully aware of. So next up, we have NeuroSense. NeuroSense Therapeutics is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company focusing on the discovery and development of targeted innovative therapeutics for neurodegenerative diseases. The company was founded, I believe, in 2017 by Alon. It trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol NRSN. And I know I didn't do it enough justice, but Alon, please take it away for us.
Sure. So thank you very much for having me here. I'll share the slides and it will be easier to explain what we actually have here. So there it is. Can you see the slides?
Yeah, we can see them all.
Perfect. So again, thank you for having me here today. I'm glad to present NeuroSense Therapeutics, a clinical stage biotech company that focuses on neurodegenerative diseases. We were founded indeed in 2017 officially. And I'm very excited to be here today and super optimistic because we found that our flagship drug, Prime C, has a biological activity in ALS patients. And this was shown in a statistically significant manner in a panel of biomarkers that we tested after people with ALS received Prime C for 12 months. So I'm delighted to present the results today and elaborate on the company. We also have an innovative approach, which is really not common. Most of the companies in the field usually focus on one molecule and one single target. And our approach is a combined therapy to target multiple pertinent targets in very complex diseases such as ALS. So let me take you from the beginning and tell you the story about NeuroSense. We were founded in 2019, but actually in 2016, we had one major goal: to find and to develop an effective treatment for ALS patients. So we developed a novel formulation of two existing FDA-approved drugs that each one alone is not related to ALS, and we are combining them together in specific doses and a unique formulation to maximize synergism between these two molecules and to target multiple pertinent pathological pathways in ALS. Sorry if you hear the noise, it's just the rain outside. I'll just continue. With that, we actually concluded a phase 2A clinical study with very promising results, which I will, of course, show you very soon. That was followed by preclinical studies that we conducted with outstanding results by all means. And again, I'll show you the results briefly in two different models, results that were much better than any other drug that was screened in these models, and also in comparison to standard of care. So we had a pre-IND meeting with the FDA, a 505(b)(2) pathway. This was decided by the FDA, agreed upon that this is the pathway, which means short time to market, to those of you who are familiar with the term. We also submitted recently, a week ago, an IND, and we are expecting, of course, to have IND clearance during March. So we have,
Just pause 1 second. Let me mute you and then unmute yourself. The audience is saying the audio is doubling.
Okay, I hope that this is better.
Yes, I think it is, Alon.
Okay, great. So just to repeat that we had the pre-IND meeting with the FDA, and recently we submitted an IND, expecting IND clearance by March, so actually next month. We have a patent that were granted already in the United States for the combination of the two molecules for the treatment of ALS. So it was granted in the US, in Australia, and now we have also these patents, patent allowance in Europe and in Canada. So we are expecting to have them in these territories as well. Additional patents are pending. Also, we submitted patent on the formulation itself, the unique formulation that we developed. And importantly, we have granted an orphan drug designation, both by the FDA and the EMA, which means market exclusivity in the US for 7 years and 10 years in Europe. We have additional compounds in our pipeline, and I'll present it soon. So this is our leadership team with Mark Luchtenberger as the chairman of the board, with vast experience in as a CEO and chairman and board member in various of successful biotech companies that were listed on NASDAQ. We also have Dr. Ferenc Strasik, a neurologist who held senior positions in companies such as Biogen, Novartis, and others. And we have additional team members, of course, super dedicated from different territories, Europe, United States, and of course, Israel. All of us are extremely passionate about what we are doing, and I think that this is very important in order to succeed in this field. And we are also very proud to have top-tier ALS clinicians with us in our scientific advisory board, among them Professor Jeremy Sheffner, who is the chair of our scientific advisory board, Professor Merit Kutkovich from Mass General, and others who are actually leading clinicians in the field, believe in us, supporting us, and believe in the potential that PRIME-C has to treat ALS patients. This is our pipeline. Of course, with ALS, we are in a phase 2 clinical stage. With Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, we are advancing in the preclinical studies in order to be well-positioned to submit an IND in early 2023. And this is what we are currently focusing on. So now I'll focus on ALS and just a few numbers. Of course, those of you who don't know, ALS is a fatal disease that leads to paralysis and eventually death within 2 to 5 years from diagnosis. There are about 5,000 people who are diagnosed with ALS each and every year in the US alone, above 80,000 people any given moment in the Western world that live with ALS. The burden on the US market is above $1 billion annually. And since this is an aging disease, we expect these numbers to grow, as you can see here, by 24% by 2040. But ALS is much more than numbers. There are people behind these numbers, and this is Shai Rishoni, who actually, a meeting between me and him in 2016 led to the initiation of NeuroSense Therapeutics. He was the CEO of Pies for Life, a non-profit organization for ALS, and supported us advancing our ideas to materialize and eventually become PRIME-C. And of course, there is a huge unmet need today, since there are only 2 FDA-approved drugs for ALS with very mild effect. And we are looking at this field, at all the drugs and assets that were out there and failed in a phase 3 clinical studies. And we understand that, we believe, of course, that they failed because all of them were targeting one single pathway in a very complex disease. And our approach, our novel approach, is to target multiple pertinent pathways in this complex disease, and therefore to achieve clinical meaningful results. This is PRIME-C, our unique extended release formulation that maximizes unique doses of ciprofloxacin and celecoxib And our main mechanisms are regulating microRNAs, affecting iron accumulation, and reducing neuroinflammation. And we estimate that the market potential is about $3 billion annually. The mechanism of action in more length. So as you can see here, what I mentioned before is just the tip of the ice. We have many more mechanisms that are in the downstream that we are actually targeting with PRIME-C. And we advanced our thinking into the preclinical stage, and we had amazing findings in this stage using two different models. One is the SOD1, and the other is TDP43, two different labs, one in Israel, the other at McGill University in Canada. And what we observed is actually 84% elevation in the SOD1 mutant model and 110% elevation in the TDP43 in the swimming behavior. And we also looked at morphology, and we saw that we have recovered motor neuron morphology, also neuromuscular junctions, and microglia cells. So when you look here on this graph, the left-hand side, you can see that celecoxib alone didn't achieve much. Ciprofloxacin was actually quite close to the standard of care, riluzole, but PRIME-C presented a very impressive synergistic effect and showed much better results than the standard of care riluzole. And actually, all other molecules that was screened in this model didn't achieve any better result than riluzole, but one, PRIME-C. As you can see here, you see the swimming pattern of the healthy fish, the swimming pattern of a sick fish with ALS, and ALS fish that received PRIME-C. As you can see, the swimming pattern is much closer to the healthy fish. You can also appreciate from this panel that the healthy motor neuron, which looks like that, as opposed to the sick motor neuron, we found that when we had treated the fish with PRIME-C, the motor neurons looked similar to the healthy ones. And also here in this panel, you can see in this graph that when it comes to the motor neuron junction, meaning that the motor neuron connects to the muscle, here you can see that there is no connection in the ALS fish. And here when it is merged, there is a connection. You can see the yellow spots. And again, you can appreciate the effect that PRIME-C had on motor neurons junction. So with these impressive results, we were encouraged by leading clinicians to move straight to the clinical stage. And so this is what we did. We initiated a phase 2A study with 15 ALS patients that received PRIME-C for 12 months. And we measured safety parameters, efficacy parameters, which were measured by the ALS functional rating scale, and forced vital capacity to measure respiratory functions. And we also looked at a panel of biomarkers. And I'm glad to present you these results, which were actually done with an intermediate formulation of PRIME-C and a certain strength. After 12 months, when we compared our patient to patients who were on placebo arms from other clinical studies, but matched patients, meaning patients that look similar to our patients, but were on other clinical studies and received placebo, you see that from respiratory aspects, our patients declined 30% less than the patients on the other studies, and 18% less when it comes to the ALS functional rating scale. And this is very meaningful. And of course, we are very optimistic that our next study that we're about to initiate in May this year will present even better results. This is what we believe, since we are moving with a better formulation and better strength. Just to mention that all the patients after 12 months requested to continue and receive PRIME-C, and of course we allowed it. So just to summarize, the study presented that the study drug was well tolerated with no severe adverse events related to the drug. We reduced functional and respiratory deterioration, and we showed significant changes in ALS biomarkers, which I'll explain here. So we collaborated with Mass General Hospital in Boston and started the study of 2 stages. One is to compare healthy people to people with ALS on a certain panel of biomarkers, and afterwards to look at our patients that received Prime C for 12 months and to see what happened there in terms of biomarkers. So this is the panel of biomarkers that we were looking at. And since we are short in time, I'll just present very briefly. You can all appreciate the numbers here. All these parameters that we measured were statistically significant different between healthy people and ALS patients. And the 2 main aspects that I want to focus now are the hallmark of ALS, which are TDP-43, as you can see, is elevated in ALS patients when compared to control, and also neuroinflammation aspects, which is also elevated when you compare it to control. So with our patients, what we actually saw that we have a decline in TDP-43, and this is very shocking actually because it's novel. Nobody, as far as we know, nobody presented decline in TDP-43, and also decline in neuroinflammation, while one can only expect that this will be increased in ALS patients over time. We saw this very impressive decline, statistically significant, and we're very happy about it. Clinicians were very, I can say maybe overwhelmed about these results. And then we moved forward to understand what does it mean. We have fabulous biomarker results. So what does it mean clinically? So we're looking at the correlation between the slowing the disease progression and the decline in TDP-43. And as you can see, we found a very nice correlation between the 2. So we are very encouraged about these results, that it reflects the biological activity, correlates with the clinical outcomes. So with that, I'll just briefly present the competition in the field. Of course, we are not alone in the field. There are other companies. One of the companies that actually also combines 2 generics to target different mechanisms in ALS is Amylyx, who are now moving forward towards submission of, actually submitted an NDA to the FDA, and the PDUFA date is expected by June this year. We, as you can see here, not only targeting multiple pertinent mechanisms in ALS, but we also presented effects on related biomarkers, and we have the novel formulation that we expect to, of course, gain much more traction by payers. So our plans forward. In this half of 2022, this what was presented actually when we went for an IPO in December 2021. And currently I can gladly say that we concluded the 21-day stock study with no findings, no concerning findings, which is great, and moving forward to the 90 days. The IND was submitted in February 16, last week. And the biomarkers, we initiated its 3rd stage with the Mass General. Results are expected in May this year, and additional patents were granted, as I mentioned, and we recruited high-level experienced team members to execute the clinical program and to meet all our timelines and all our commitments. And this is what we're doing. In the second half of 2022, we plan to conclude Alzheimer's and Parkinson's preclinical studies, and as mentioned before, to be positioned to submit an IND for these indications in early 2023. We are expecting top-line results by the first half of 2023 from the ALS phase 2 clinical study, which again will be initiated in May, in 3 months now, May this year. And then we'll move forward to a phase 3 clinical study by the second half of 2023. This is a different presentation, as we also have a discovery arm in our company, and we are continuing R&D activities. The 90 days talks that I mentioned. We produced a PK batch and we submitted the IND and about to start PK studies according to the FDA requirements, of course. And we are about to initiate the phase 2B by May this year. If, and this is very important, if the regulatory environment will, which is changing all the time, will enable this, we are flexible in this study to turn it into a pivotal study for approval eventually, and run the phase 3 study post-approval as a phase 3/4 study. And this is, of course, depends on the regulatory environment. And if so, we are flexible enough to make this happen and turn this into a pivotal study. This is just to mention again that Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease are also planned for the second half of, for 2023. Of course, we'll, once we have success with these indications, and it will reflect on the company in many ways, many terms, then we will raise more funds in order to execute these studies. Fun facts, so just to tell you about NeuroSense, that we have actually over 70% women in the company, 66% of our board, although we are an Israeli company, we also have an office in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we have employees in Europe, and 66% of our board members are US-based, with a vast experience in biotech public companies, and 50% of our board is actually women, and we're very proud of that. Thank you very much for listening, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Alon, thank you so much for the presentation. It's always great to hear what NeuroSense is doing and how the company is progressing. So one of the questions that came in is the results you mentioned of 84% and 110% respectively, and then also with the current formulation and strength of Prime C relative to the placebo. You said that you guys are hoping to increase those numbers. Is it really just a function of formulation and strength? And to what numbers do you expect to increase the results to?
Okay, so I'll relate to this question with regards to the formulation. It is very difficult to say when you change the doses and you have a more sophisticated formulation that is supposed to maximize the synergism that you found, what will be the clinical outcomes. We expect, of course, no less than what we saw previously in the phase 2A study, but it is very difficult to say if we'll gain 40% effect or 60% effect. It's very hard to know. I'm throwing numbers here, don't catch me on these figures. I'm just stating that
Understood.
It's hard to make these extrapolations, and this is why we need to run a clinical study, of course.
Thank you, Alon. I believe we have one more question that just somebody's asked. So, Alon,
yeah,
you've got
Robert,
it?
I'll take it. Alon, thank you for the great presentation. Can you maybe address some of the challenges with treating neurodegenerative diseases which have made these indications difficult, and where NeuroSense can be a leader in terms of changing the treatment paradigm?
Absolutely. One of the challenges is first that the disease is different between one patient to another. It's very complex. There are several mechanisms that go wrong in this disease, several pathological pathways that doesn't function well. This is why we're targeting, we believe, the most important ones in this disease. And yet, I must say that we are not expecting that all the patients will gain the same effect from Prime C. we do expect and we believe that actually we can affect many patients, and some of them to better extent than others. And on average, we'll present in a clinical study very good results, but we are trying also to find a way here. And this is what we are leading here with the biomarkers that we found, to have a precision medicine. So actually to screen patients according to a certain set of biomarkers, and then to state, okay, these patients, according to the results, they can gain a lot from Prime C, it can benefit them a lot, and other patients less. And therefore, in the future clinical study, to stratify accordingly and to have much better success rates in this clinical trial to succeed and eventually present and bring Prime C to market to at least these patients that we can screen and stratify, and perhaps even all the patients. Of course, it depends on our discussions with the FDA.
Alon, thank you so much. I think we're going to call time here for the presentation. As I said earlier, it's fantastic listening to what you guys are doing. I think everybody understands how complex this disease is, especially when you're having to track so many biomarkers. It's a very nuanced disease, and it's fantastic that you guys are attacking the field so well. Wish you all the best of luck. And
thank you very much.
The presentation, we will have a recording of it. We will share it with the company. We'll post it on our site, and we will keep a copy of the presentation. We encourage everyone to go to the NeuroSense site to learn more about what the company is doing. And with that, Alon, thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you.